Long-term rentals are good for business, right? Well, not always. I'm Kevin Davis from Your Exceptional Life, and today we'll be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly with long-term rentals. When you own a vacation rental home and you're trying to rent it, it's easy to be enticed with long-term rentals. Through your inquiries on TripAdvisor and VRBO, you'll likely get a lot of inquiries asking about special discounts for monthly rentals, 4 to 5 weeks, long-term rentals longer than a week. Where we do a lot of weekly rentals. We're in an area in Orlando that typically has 1-week rentals for families on vacation. So that's sort of our standard. But in January, February, and March, and April, we tend to get a lot of snowbirds looking for long-term rentals. And of course, they always want a deal. Excuse me, at first glance, this may be great, right? Doing a 30 to 35 night rental is awesome. I won't have any empty space. I don't have to worry about whether or not there's going to be income coming in or that sort of thing. Well, I caution you against that thinking primarily because long-term rentals and long-term rental guests are actually far more expensive on your home and to rent to than most short-term rentals, than most weekly rentals. There are other concerns that you need to be aware of. We won't go into those here, but there's tenant law once you get over 90 days in most areas. Could be 60 days in some areas. And there's all sorts of reasons not to rent, even that long, because then you're not really into a vacation rental scenario. You're more into a long-term tenant situation. So we won't cover much of that here, but be aware of those that's another consideration. But let's talk about just the finances between long-term rentals. Okay, so let's look at a month like March, right? For us, our season for spring break starts early March, goes through mid to late April. So for us in Orlando, you've got lots of people coming in to go to the theme parks, go to Legoland, Disney World, Universal Studios, that sort of thing. Those are our primary guests. So they're going to come in typically for a week, but we do get a lot of inquiries for snowbirds looking for January, February, and into March and April for those 30 to 40 night rentals. And of course, they don't want to pay what people are paying for the weekly rentals. So you may think, man, I would jump right on that and make sure I fill those spots in so that I don't have any empty nights. Well, here's another scenario I want you to think about. Think about what guests that are staying for a week, how they use your home versus how guests use your home when they're staying for a month, right? So our typical, this is going to vary based on your location, but typically people are on vacation and are actually doing vacation related things regardless of the area that you happen to be in. For us in particular, the typical 1-week guest is going to come in, and then for at least 80 to 85% of their time in our home, they're actually going to be out and about in Orlando at the theme parks, doing the attractions, going to the beach, whatever. So typically they'll leave in the early morning, come back around dinner time, spend the evenings there, maybe a couple of days here and there for rest breaks to hang out at the pool and that sort of thing. So they're only using the home for 20 to 25% of the time that they're actually there, other than sleeping, clearly. I'm talking about waking hours. Whereas if you take someone that's staying for a month, they're there typically maybe to play golf a couple of times a week, maybe just to hang out, have the pool, but they're literally in the home almost every day, all day. And so if you think about things like electricity, water usage, wear and tear on the home, air conditioning, especially if it's in an area like mine where you have to air condition the home, or even heating if you're in an area where you're a ski resort location or that sort of thing, they're going to be putting a huge difference in use of the house over someone that's staying a week. So that's number one. Your cost per guest, it goes through the roof. I would say probably 2 to 3 times higher for someone staying long-term than someone staying a week at a time. That's just in my particular case. You can sort of go through and look at those numbers yourself. So some real-world examples. In spring break, we charge $139 a night plus pool heating, which is about at our cost, $20 a night currently. Electricity is expensive in Florida, so you end up at a certain price in order to do the nightly rate. That's in our high season. We stay almost fully booked from January through the end of April, have a little bit of break in May, and then stay booked all summer. That's the sort of destination we have. So I'm pretty confident that I can rent those weeks out at that rate. So typically people will come in and want to rent the month of March, and instead of paying $139 a night, they may even want to try to get it down towards the $90 to $100 a night, which that means I'm losing effectively $40 to $50 per night that guest stays. So I'm already losing a lot of money just on the income side of things. And like we already discussed, the cost of those guests is way higher. So it's really easy to get upside down with these guests that stay longer. So I would highly encourage you to look at the math to see whether or not those things make sense. Make sure you know what your margins are. Make sure you know exactly what the cost is to rent to those long-term people versus short-term people. Another component of the math is basically it's easy to think that having empty nights in your schedule is always a bad thing. And that's not necessarily true. Over the course of the month, over the course of the year, what you're looking for is more of an average per night rate when people are renting your home. So when you're talking about long-term guests versus short-term guests, one thing to look at, and we'll use the example of March again. If I rent my home for a monthly guest in March at a $100 a night versus $150 a night in my case, that means I'm sacrificing a huge nightly rate. All right. So I'm at 50%. I'm losing 50% already. So I would actually be willing to have my house completely sit empty for a week, and I would still come out ahead. I'm sort of doing these numbers in my head. So you'd have to put those numbers out on paper to make sure that that makes sense. But in general, for me, I don't get worried about not having every single night rented, because I know that my margin on the rents on the nights that we are renting is high enough to make up for any empty nights. Plus, I don't mind having the house sit empty. I'd rather it sit empty than get a ton of bargain hunters in there that are just gonna totally, pack up the house and all that. I don't want that sort of guest. We've talked about that in other videos. But so don't be afraid to have your house sit empty. It's fall right now. We're looking at the low season here and where we are, so you start to get a little stressed out about your schedule and all that. But go back and look. If you've rented before, you'll have some sense of what that looks like. If you haven't rented before and you're new, just know that whatever your high season is for your area, if you're priced effectively, if you're providing value, then you're definitely going to get the renters to come in if you sort of do some of the things that people recommend, me included. So basically what I want you to understand is that don't get sucked in by monthly renters. Is there anything wrong with doing monthly renters? Absolutely not. What I typically do is I will do some sort of value add for them or very minor discount on the fee. We charge a pet fee, so a lot of times if they want to bring a pet, I'll just waive that pet fee completely. For me, it's only $100. But then I'm charging them the same nightly rate or very, very close to it that I would for a weekly rental. So that way I know for a fact that I'm getting the margins on every single night that's rented. There are people out there willing to pay higher prices for higher value. And I know that we can attract those, so I'm not that concerned. So concentrate on what you're doing. Look through that. Make sure your pricing makes sense. I always communicate with the monthly people that, hey, this is what we provide. This is why we charge what we do. We stay fully booked, all that stuff. So you kind of establish value and let them go do their thing. They may be wanting to come back for a week sometime for a shorter term rental some other time of the year. So you want to communicate nicely and really help to establish that value. So I hope that helps you. I'm Kevin Davis from Your Exceptional Life. I would invite you to take part in my free mini course that I have out there. Go to yourexceptionallife.com or vacationrentalprofitmethod.com. You can sign up for it. It's a 3-part series that will go through video, some worksheets, and sort of get you started on the vacation rental thing. And then I'm also doing a full course later on. It's currently in the works. So I appreciate your time. I hope that's helpful. Have a great day.